Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Emily, and thank you, AIGA Minnesota, for continuing this long-standing partnership, which, as Emily mentioned, Insights turns 40 next year, which is wild. So we're thrilled at the Walker to continue this legacy of supporting design with the Design Insights series. Before we kick off, I just want to acknowledge that the Walker Art Center is located on the contemporary, traditional, and ancestral homelands of the Dakota people. This site, which was once an expanse of marshland and meadow, holds meaning for Dakota, Ojibwe, and indigenous people from other Native nations who still live in our community today. And although this is the last in-person program for Insights this year, this Saturday we have the first of 2 free workshops, which you can still register for online. This Saturday is experimenting with analog forms in online systems with unknown unknowns, which are basically seeing the weird and warped ways AI and other generative processes are affecting the physical things we make and vice versa. And then the following Saturday, on April 5th, we're doing another free online workshop with Laura Coombs and Stephen Rodriguez looking at the relationship between designers and printers and the collaborations and strange and wild ways we can push how we print things. Also, at some point next month in April, we will release videos of all of the in-person lectures, including this one, free on both our YouTube channel as well as on walkerart.org. And we will have a reception. So if folks didn't happen to get a drink or want to get another drink after the talk, please feel free to join us for a celebration of all our speakers up in the Basenet lobby. And I also just want to, of course, thank the group effort, both in our design studio, our marketing communication teams, our entire event production team up there in the wings who really make all of this possible, and our ASL interpreters. So please. And I'd also like to thank Shapco printers who donate the printing of our posters every year. And if you didn't grab one, we have some more available on the way out that I recommend you get. It has some amazing artwork from OddMart in it. And as we've kind of mentioned, that Insights has, since 1986, really kind of focused on bringing some of the leading voices and practitioners in design and design thinking from around the world to the Walker. It's really highlighted graphic design, architecture, interactive design, and all kinds of forms of what we generally call design. But there's another side of design that's a little stranger, a little weirder, and a little more odd. And we're very excited that tonight we're able to celebrate folks that come out of animation, illustration, comics, and all its strange mutant permutations. So we're very happy to have Brad McGinty and a team from OddMart. And if you guys haven't been up to OddMart on Lindale, I don't really know where you've been, but I highly recommend you check it out. It is an amazing store filled with amazing work and an incredibly fantastic community that comes together with programs. It emerged out of GLORP Gum, the small business that is the only gum that comes with a free t-shirt. And now it has become really a hub for an entire local community of amazing designers, artists, and other sort of practitioners. So without any further ado, please welcome Brad McGinty and the crew from OddMart.
Hi. Wait, don't allow. Okay. Hi, I'm Brad McGinty. I'm the owner of OddMart, of course. And I want to thank the Walker for having us here. This is a really, really big honor, especially knowing that they've had places like Extreme Noise and other, and Insert Name Zine Fest do this talk as well. So yeah, I'm pretty nervous, so I hope this goes well. So yeah. So our talk tonight is going to be basically about, I'll talk about my brand, of course, GLORP Gum, gum that comes with the shirt and all that good stuff, and my artistic process. But then I'll give you a brief tour of the shop. We'll talk about how OddMart came to be and some of the events that we have there and why. And then I'll turn it over to some of the extremely talented artists and writers that make OddMart kind of what it is right now. And then we'll wrap it up with like some question and answers. So we'll start off with me. I'm Brad McGinty. I grew up in Stone Mountain, Georgia. It's about 30 minutes outside of Atlanta. And my parents were both fast food workers. My dad worked for KFC, and my mom was an employee at McDonald's. And so, money was kind of always an issue with us, but we always had lots of paper and pens around, and I was a very anxious and asthmatic kid. So drawing was like the one thing that really held my focus a lot. And yeah, I've been obsessed with comics for as long as I can remember. I was one of those kids who was distracted in school, and I drew comics all day, and I never did my work. And needless to say, I made horrible grades, and I barely graduated high school. So this is my first professional work that ever got printed. This was for a small, freebie magazine called Atlanta Sideshow that was in Atlanta. This was like, I was in high school. I read out of high school in 98, September 98, this ran in this magazine. And, I could probably still sell these stickers today. They're pretty good. So I worked a lot. And back then there was a lot of freebie magazines. They were everywhere. That's how, before Craigslist kind of killed all that. A lot of people I knew worked for them. And I got paid for that, which was insane. And yeah, I did. I worked for the magazine for a while, and we worked for other small press and freebie magazines around town. For years, I did a syndicated comic with my friend Brad, my friend Josh. I'm Brad. That's Brad and Josh up top, and that ran for a couple of years in Insight magazine. And we would do it was a really great time. All these weirdo shops, head shops, and every vintage store, and I even did wrestling school ads. Were the first ads I ever did for this magazine. I did for the Southern Extreme Wrestling School. I'd get $300 for little quarter-page ads, which is kind of insane because you probably wouldn't get that for a cover now. But yeah, that was the day. And then Craigslist kind of killed all that stuff, and they all died off. Yada yada yada. But I consider myself. I've always self-published comics and made comics. And this is just some of the self-publishing stuff I did early on. I don't have pictures of all of it. It was all kind of just tossed out. I was always making my own comics. I never had a real interest or desire to make comics a career. I never thought or heard of anyone making money on their own comics or these kind of comics. But there was a big kind of small press scene in Athens, Georgia, and I would go there. Actually, Fluke is tomorrow, and in Athens, and that was a big show we'd always go to. So every time we do a show, we'd make new comics or zines or something to sell at these shows, and just to trade and just to get more comics and maybe pay for a little bit of travel or something. And yeah, and then But in 2007, sorry, I'm jumping around a lot here. 2007, I got a job working at Chasing Gremlins. It was a tech company, and I was hired as an animator based on my comics. And I created, basically, we did a lot of animation and for all sorts of random kind of things, early Adult Swim, super deluxe projects and stuff like that. There was kind of a little of a rush there that everyone was kind of chasing that Aqua Teen Hunger Force money, and they were always looking for cheap cartoons to make. And I did everything by hand. I didn't really know any other way to do it, so I was drawing everything on a light box and inking it all with a brush, and we sort of imported it all in the Flash. And I was doing all the voices, and we were writing stuff. And I don't know. By the time I left, it was. I think I did over 36 cartoons or something insane like that. It was a lot. But, the rates just kept dropping lower and lower in animation, and at a certain point it just became, obsolete a little bit, or was just kind of silly to compete with that. Here's a bunch of pictures from some of those cartoon pitches. One was Mandar Suburbia. It's kind of a He-Man sort of thing about a pizza chef who kind of lived in a medieval suburb and did stuff. There was one about a little kid in a coma who had a fantasy world inside his head. There's one called Drugs there at the bottom. There's one called Mant. There's music videos, all sorts of stuff. Just goofball stuff. But these were really fun to make. Got to work with a really great guy, Richard Parsons, who did all the music and stuff. He's a really talented musician, which was insane to me that he would even make silly music for these cartoons. But yeah. And then at that time, sorry, I'm getting lost here. So in 2009, me and my partner Kate, we moved to Minneapolis, and I was working remotely still for Chasing Gremlins for about 2 years still. But this is also the first time in my life I ever had a computer in my house that had Photoshop on it and Illustrator and other things. So I could finally do all this extra work because I literally never had a computer that could handle all that stuff before. So in December 2011, I kind of saw the writing on the wall, and I kind of knew I needed to start doing other stuff to pay the bills and such. So I started doing these Christmas cards. I drew this image here. It's Are Your Greetings Season. This is sort of American Christmas Devil. And I came up with this story, basically, that it was my grandfather. This picture is supposed to be my grandfather. Of course, it actually is my grandfather. Not really. But so he started, the story was like he started a greeting card company with, after World War II, he was shot by a Japanese soldier, and they both worked together to make this greeting card company. And it was like a goofy thing on my blog. It wasn't a big deal. I was just trying to make some cards. And it went really viral, and we got passed around, and people were always tearing it apart, saying, oh, it's not real, you can tell it's not real, you can tell, and all that stuff. So yeah, it's not real, it's just that, it's what it is. So yeah, so after I made that card, yeah, it was, we sold like 12,000 or something. Me and Kate had to pack all these things, and we were doing with stamps, and we didn't know what to do, and then PayPal was crashing. This is back in like when you had WordPress blogs and PayPal buttons on the blogs, and everything was, was breaking all the time, and PayPal like held my money for like 3 weeks and shut my payments down at the height of it going viral. So it's just kind of like insane. But it became a thing, and so the next year I was like, oh, I'll make some more cards, and we made this sort of Santa. We kind of built on the mythology of this like giant scary Santa monster, and we built this big suit, we took these pictures. And then every year after that, we just kept making more and more comics. So we did all sorts of weird, I did all these, this isn't all of them, but this is a lot of them, so. And every year was sort of a different riff. There was a lot of goofy ones, and I don't know, they are what they are. And they were really popular, and it became like a really big thing that allowed me to do a lot of other stuff. But at the same time, I was also doing comics, and then I was running my webcomic Battle Zoo, and I was doing other small press shows, and I needed a way to make some money to get back down south to go to one of the Fluke show in Athens, and I thought I'd put a T-shirt up for pre-sale, which was that weird Ninja Turtle shirt up there, and I made like 50 or something. I paid for the $270 plane ticket, and it was great. And then the next year, I was like, that worked out pretty well. I'll do it again, and I put this shirt up for pre-sale, and it went really viral, and I sold just a ton of these shirts, and it was kind of a nightmare. I remember I didn't know how many shirts I sold. I don't know how many we sold at the time, but I do remember it was like the largest check I've ever written in my life, and I was like writing this check to this like T-shirt company that was in like Arizona, and I was like, I hope this goes well. I have no idea what I'm going to do if I don't. So yeah, we figured out a lot of time with this, and we were in our apartment at the time, so we were trying to figure out how to run like a mail order business with all these cards and shirts. And so I just kept making more shirts, and so these were some goofball shirts we made. It's a Robert Cop 2. And I'd figure out ways to just kind of promote the shirts. Like I'd run these ads on my webcomic, kind of over there on the far left there. I'd run them on there just to kind of mail away ads and stuff, and I was making these toys to kind of go with them. So there was like 6 of these like big Robert Cops and like, I don't know, 100-something of the little guys that we sent out. And I kept going with shirts. And after working and creating all this infrastructure to make these shirts and getting all this shipping stuff and figuring out, I obviously had to make more shirts. And the pop culture shirts were kind of okay, but it wasn't really what I wanted to do. So I just made this like GLORP Gum thing up, and out of nowhere, I like gum. I chew a lot of gum all the time, and I thought it was a funny way to sell a shirt, and it was a kind of a fun way with the history to sort of do whatever I wanted and kind of keep it sort of together, the glue. This is a picture of my friends, Jordan and Curtis there. They had a studio in this warehouse, and that sign's not real, and all these gumballs are just cake, like sprinkles you'd put on cake. And everyone would ask me how many gumballs we had in this photo shoot, and I would just make up numbers. I had a little FAQ on the website for a while to talk about all of them. But those are just matchboxes, and like there's a little tiny boxes there full of like different size cake sprinkles. It's all fake. Anyway, it was this was the history of the GLORP Gum. The idea was that it was a in World War II, they had these pellets that would fight like air sickness, and they would come with like a shirt that would absorb the vomit, and like soldiers would get like hooked on this goofy gum, and there's pictures. They're all fake, of course, and yeah, there's the shirt, there's the gum, and yeah, that's kind of how it worked. And there's the whole. You can look it up on the website if you want to read the whole thing. But I was just trying to promote everything in general as a freelancer. I was just trying to get my name out there and do whatever I could just to kind of stay afloat. And here's the commercial that I made.
The Charlie Brown and Snoopy Show will return after these messages.
La 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 12. Mr. Glurp, how glurpy is GLORP Gum? gonna fix your nose.
Glurp Gum, the only gum that comes with a shirt.
So that was it. That was my. Thank you. Thank you very much. That was my friend Jay Chris's. He'll come up later. His daughter was shooting that, and she had a little puppet voice. She was like 3 or 4 at the time, and that little line about the picking the nose wasn't in there. We were on Skype, and I was directing her, and she was trying to pick my nose on Skype, and I was just like, "This is too good. I got to keep that in there. It's way better than what I wrote." But this is the first line of Glorp stuff here. It was, there's Jess up there on the far left. They work at the shop. And there's my wife, Kate, Curtis. And basically, it was these 4 shirts. And they kind of all had sort of a different air, a different approach and idea about them all. And there was stickers. And it was kind of just trying to create this whole sort of lived-in kind of universe feel. And this was my comic Battle Zoo that was running sort of at the same time. And I would put these ads up for the shirts as well, sort of fake mail order ads that everyone's used to seeing in comics and all that good stuff. And this was our first Halloween. Halloween was always a big deal. This was still in the age of blogs where people were like blogging a lot, and that seemed more. I had more traction on that than I ever had in like social media. I was never very popular on social media, very good at it, but blogs would always carry things like IO9 and all these Boing Boing and some and Laughing Squid that aren't really around anymore, but. We kind of keep doing this, so every year we would do a big Halloween release. This was a really popular shirt. In the early days, I tried to make there's a spring release and a Halloween release, and this sort of shirt image came from an idea that I saw at a fair, and there were these weird silkscreen sort of monsters on the side of this like fair ride. They weren't like monsters like this, but it was like they had this texture on them because they were laid over. And so for years I put this like, you probably can't see it in there very well, but there's these weird textures under the black ink that were from where the carnies would like stencil the black over the certain colors. So I really was really into that. There's another Halloween picture in a shirt. That's my wife, Kate, in our murder basement. And there's another one. It's a sort of a Kirby influenced shirt that I did later in the second release that we did. And there's another big photo shoot that we did, and more fake gumballs. And and so I think my work, the shirts kind of fall in a few different categories. I mean, the main one's probably monsters. This one is sort of, classic monster stuff. This is sort of 80s skateboard monsters, I guess. I don't really know. Also, monsters, but also funny, I think. And then just kind of gory stuff. There's also lovey-dovey stuff here, like here's when we have Valentine's, and like some of these shirts are romantic, I guess. And but I consider myself a cartoonist, and comics are really what I want to do and I like to do the most. So we put out comics that kind of were in that sort of weird, sort of attached to Glorp. Some of them, like Glorp, is like the main sort of like plot device, like in Tormando's, that Ninja Turtle comic there, where it's the Glorp company was trying to sell these gum-filled pudding pockets things, and it's made they paid a Russian kid to draw a comic, and that's kind of the comic. And then sometimes it's just, ads in the back and stuff, but here's a bunch of those kind of comics inside. I really like coming up with different styles and designing the characters and kind of making sort of, homages to different styles of comics. I mean, that's really where I get interested in, is the changing things up a lot. And then this is the process. Oh, the process. So I just draw everything with like a brush pen, brushes, sometimes fountain pens, and red Pilot pens. I use red Pilot pens for everything. And I do everything in my sketchbook. I use this because I think they used it on the program cover, but after a while, what I basically do is draw tons in my sketchbook all the time, and then when it's time to, I got to do something, and I look through my sketchbook and I try to figure out what I'm going to use and how. So like I saw this little guy was there, and I knew like, I better just keep the skateboard wheels separate and the arms separate, because I didn't know exactly what shape the graphic would be, because I've been doing this a long time. I kind of knew. And that's the graphic up there at the top. I don't like to use fonts ever. I usually do hand-drawn lettering unless it makes sense to use fonts. I don't think it does. Here's another one of those sketchbooks pages. I asked everyone, like, what sketchbook pages should I put on the presentation? And everyone said I should do these. I don't know. Just a bunch of weird Garfields I draw, and I was like, I don't know. So I inked them up. Some of them I made into stickers. Some of them maybe I'll make stickers later, shirts later on. Yeah, just a bunch of ideas. But sometimes, yeah, these are a bunch of ideas that don't work out. Yeah, there's probably some stuff in there. I think my son X'd out rock and roll. I'm just constantly scribbling stuff in there. A lot of these little ones became pins later on. I'm sure the Sasquatch thing will become something. I'll figure it out. It's just some ideas are good ideas, but just at like the wrong time. But sometimes I get it right the first time. I got it right. I drew that on the phone on that little envelope there. I was on the phone with somebody, I don't remember what, but I just drew it. We weren't talking about anything boner related. Then I take a picture. What I always do, I take a picture of my phone and I put it in the computer, and I usually print it out with blue lines, and then I just draw over it. And yeah, I did it, and I nailed it right out the gate. Yeah. So this is another example of kind of how it works. Sometimes I just sit down and like, I don't know, I'm gonna draw something gory and weird, and I just start drawing on the left-hand side. Then I'm like, as I'm drawing and inking, I usually think of better ideas. So then I will take a piece of paper or something, lay it over, and just kind of like a second pass of a script or something. I try to add more gags or just think of different things. Sometimes it works out, a lot of times it doesn't, but this one I think worked out. It looked pretty good. And yeah, this is another example. Sometimes I worked on this image here on the right, like 2014 or something. I think last year I was like, I think I kind of got it right. I was the wrong style altogether. I think it worked better as this sort of, more of a Big Daddy Roth kind of vibe, as opposed to this 60s sort of weirdos vibe. But this is another example of a good idea, but I think the style was wrong, but I'll look at it. I don't know. Maybe I picked the wrong one. I used the one on the right, the flatter 60s style, but yeah, it was just, I thought it looked fake to me, the one on the left. So, but this was full color. This is just for a gumball machine at the store. So yeah, this is something I do a lot. I don't know if a lot of other artists do this as well. I made a small little sketch of this garbage gobbler, and I and I blew it up. But I'm a righty, so like drawing sort of right to left is a lot easier than left to right, and I know I'm gonna flip it. So I always knew it was gonna go left to right the way you read, but I just draw it right to left and know I'm gonna flip it later. So much easier. I drew this guy, looked like a wolf. I was like, that's no good. So I redrew his face as a raccoon and then put it in Photoshop, flipped it. This is I guess interesting. I don't know, but. This was one of our Halloween shirts. This is like a 17 by 24 kind of drawing, and I wanted to do a mummy. We do these Halloween shirts every year, and I was trying to get an interesting texture for the wrapping for the mummy, so I just cut the drawing up and sort of chopped it into pieces and cut up some ace bandage and wrapped it around it, and then scanned it in and cleaned it up and flipped it around a bit, and it was pretty cool. People ask me how I got that texture a lot. It sort of, I colored it blue there. I think it worked. And yeah, just some fun analog stuff. I try not to use brushes or any of those pre-made textures or anything like that you can buy. I feel like if you use the same tools all the time, you're going to get kind of the same stuff. So I just do it the way I do it. And so this is sort of, this is a little bit of a comic process that I do. It's kind of the same kind of thing. This was a comic pitch I did with the Matt Fraction, who's a writer, kind of a comic writer, writes Sex Criminals and Casanova and a bunch of other kind of mainstream kind of comics. And his son bought my T-shirts all the time, so he reached out and asked me if I wanted to do a comics project. And of course I said yes. And it's a weird idea. He made it for me because I wanted to draw like big, gross, kind of sweaty dudes. It's about wrestlers, but told sort of a horror wrestler story told through the format of a Mad magazine. So it sort of has these 2-page spread layouts like Mad magazine would have. So this is my roughs with this pen on a copy paper, 11 by 17. Then I would scan that in, I would kind of clean it up in a Photoshop, sort of just breaking down the shapes and kind of giving things volume. One of the nice things about computers, I always tend to cram everything really full with too much stuff, so it's nice to be able to sort of bring it in the computer and shrink it all down, make it fit a little better, make the word balloons breathe easier. It's the same thing. So after I print out the blue lines, then I just kind of go nuts on it and just do crazy stuff like that. And I like this because it's kind of a mainstream comic, so you can really do a lot of that like kind of noodling, all that kind of fun, kind of boy 90s comics kind of stuff all over the page. It's kind of cool. And there it is all cleaned up in black and white with I always, whenever I do digital lettering, I print it out, and I find that I like it. I print it on paper, like rough paper. I don't draw on Bristol board. I can't draw on smooth paper at all. So I print it out, and I scan it back in so it looks like kind of gritty and weird. I think that looks a lot better because I just don't like digital lettering. But this was Mad Magazine style, so that's what we were going for. In my own kind of comics, this is a Stony Baloney. He's sort of, an homage to like Fabulous Freak Brothers and Doper Dan and all that kind of fun underground comics that I love so much. But yeah, I draw relatively tiny and squares and pages. I don't really lay these out in full pages. I draw each panel separately and blow it up and print it out and then, hand letter it and all that good stuff. Here's another sort of example of a different type of comic, I guess I do, is I try to, when I'm doing something really like animated like this, I really try to just work on the characters and try to preserve the sort of energy of the drawing. Like up top, that wolf, I just kind of nailed it right in this little sketchbook. I was like, I can't lose that. So I have to like take a picture of it and I scan it in and I lay out the page based around these sort of like drawings and I'll kind of wrap everything else around it. And there's a picture there of my son when he was really little on the drawing board, way over there on the left. This is probably the most important step, is having a J. Chris. J. Chris is my friend. He's a really talented designer and illustrator in Greenville, South Carolina. And I don't know, if you don't have a J. Chris, you should just throw in the towel because you need someone, and he's a friend, and most importantly, he'll tell you what's wrong with something. He'll say, no, like this is bad, or like, do I need the ear goo in that illustration there? He said, he doesn't need the ear goo. I kept the ear goo. I don't always agree with J. Chris, but I find the process of like taking the picture of the screen and then making it very small and sending it via text and seeing the image very, very small usually solves a lot of the problems if I'm having a problem, which is kind of cool. But I text J. Chris all the time. You should definitely, I'll give you a number after the show if you want to text him. Oh, here's the store. So from when I started selling shirts online in 2011, Glorp had 5 different homes. We were in our apartment over by MCAD, 21st and 1st. We started there, and we were very packed in there. I remember I measured at one point. It was like I had 24 inches between all the boxes behind me and my computer. So it was like just barely enough to turn around for a while. So then we bought a duplex, and I put it in the bottom of an illegal apartment. It was like a 2-bedroom apartment in a basement. And we ran out of there for a long time. But then in 2021, we moved to a new house and set up the Glorp was set up in the basement there. And we did the shipping and receiving there for a long time. And then in August of 2023, I finally found a spot that I liked. And I don't know, it was a good spot. I looked forever. I mean, I was always kind of just looking at spaces, up and down Lindale. I've been to every empty spot you could imagine, just sort of asking and just kind of figuring out how that kind of world would work. I had a mural business in a commercial lease a long time ago that didn't do well, so I was always really scared of trying to sign some kind of lease with a commercial property. So we found this building, and it was a print shop originally. It was way bigger than I thought I needed. It's not huge, but it felt big for a goofy T-shirt store for sure. But it was there, we had a little kid and a baby at the time, so it wasn't really great timing, but I felt like it just felt like it was the space. It was totally, and it was a good idea. So here's sort of as we sort of worked on the shop. Nothing super exciting, just building the bar, putting the gumball machines in. When we opened the shop, we spent about, it was like $24,000 opening it up, which isn't a lot for a shop. It sounds like a lot, but originally I was going to have 2 partners move in. It was a book store was going to take part of it, and a vendor store was going to take another part of it. But that all fell through, so we were kind of stuck in this position to like kind of build it up out of nothing. And I didn't have any pictures of opening day, but this is opening day. My wife took this picture here because I was up all night, we were putting stuff together, and I came home and slept for like 2 hours and came back. And I think around, I don't know, whenever my wife rolled, this was Lindale Open Streets. That's why we had to be open. It was like, we were going to miss it. We couldn't miss the big Lindale Open Streets day. But then at some point she pointed out that I had 2 different shoes on, and I didn't know because I got dressed in the dark because I didn't want to wake the baby up or anything. So, but I was there all day. I didn't even know. So think this is the walkthrough. This is the walkthrough that she shot of opening day. It's very empty, is the reason I'm showing you how empty it was. So, there's Matt. There's not much else. Big bunch of shirts. More shirts. And a very empty room. And me probably pricing the art.
Oh, you know you did the video?
Yep, there's our book room.
Here's the
It
bookshop.
did not have very many books in it. There's Monster Matt. So here's a tour of the store. I'll give you that real quick. It's located at 2520 Lindell Avenue South. It's 2,480 square feet. And so when you go in, you'll see someone behind the counter. This is Alexis. Maybe Alexis is out here. I don't know. She's checking in books. And they'll probably say hi to you or something like that. And then you turn to this way, to the right, and you'll see the main room. And you see how much stuff we have now. There's new stuff on the right. There's here we put like new stuff from artists, new stickers, and new books go there on the front. This is the Glorp wall, of course, all the t-shirts and good stuff like that. Your gumball machines. Those are lentils there. They are lentils. Everyone is confused by the lentils. Full-grown adults often bring us handfuls of lentils to the counter and they don't know what to do with them because they thought something else would come out of the machine that wasn't lentils. But I don't know how to do that, so it's lentils. So yeah, if you need lentils though, it's probably a good price on lentils. I've refilled it twice. They're organic lentils from Aldi across the street. I've also seen people eat them. People eat them all the time too. So more shirts, hats. We sell a lot of hats. And the vintage room / print room. This is where we have a lot of prints and paintings from different artists. There's Eli. Eli's paintings are up there. Eli's maybe here somewhere. Yeah, hey, there he is. And yeah, and then we have Greer, and we have paintings from a lot of different great artists around town. Oops, this way. Oh, here's the weird punk books section. Sam's here tonight. He'll talk more about your punk books. But yeah, we sell a lot of those, and they're all really great. More knickknacks and all that fun stuff. And there's zines. We have a lot of zines. This rack in particular is for sort of the odd size zines and mostly like text-focused zines. A lot of poetry zines from local creators and all that good stuff. Yeah, oh, there's Monster Matt stuff. Monster Matt's here tonight too. He'll talk about his work. There's Tori, who's Night Shift Ceramics here. She's here as well. There's Xiamar's work. Oh, look, there's Lita's work right next to it. So then you go into the book room. Here's our books. We have we carry books from small presses mostly. A lot of self-published stuff as well, Fantagraphics and just numerous other indie publishers. This is our comics rack. We have lots of local comics here and just small press, self-published stuff exclusively. We don't carry a lot of Cape comics or anything like that. More zines. This is our sort of standard size zine rack. We have a lot of good stuff, a lot of RPG gaming zines and stuff on this rack as well. And down here is, we keep all of our back issues. We specialize a lot in underground comics and alternative comics from like the 80s and 90s and aughts. We have a lot of that kind of artsier comics. We don't really sell a lot of superhero comics or anything like that. It's a very particular set of comics, I guess. I don't know. It's they're the best comics. I grew up poor and I read black and white comics were like my favorite thing in the world when I was a kid. I couldn't figure out how to draw like Jim Lee, but I could kind of ape like Jeff Nicholson or who did Ultra Klutz or something like that. I could see how those comics were made, so I was always really attracted to those comics. I like to draw comics more than I like to read comics. But yep. And then we go into here. Oh, there's the our event space. But during the week we do shipping and receiving in the event space. We open these bays up. We have our shirts and fill in orders, and those racks kind of come out, roll out, and there's like a shipping and receiving desk, and that's Lily there, hard at work. I think organizing stickers and doing orders probably. This is our event space here as well. I painted all this in September. I upgraded the lighting, and we have a projector now, and we have a screen. So this was a big upgrade we did after we had some money from running for a little bit, and I think it's kind of I'm chipping away at everything little by little. It's kind of very much by myself on a lot of this stuff. So, but it's working out. And here's a blurry picture of my messy office / stockroom. Oh, and there's the computer where I'm working on this slideshow. So Here's our employees now. It was just 2 people for up until maybe the summer, so I think. And there's Frankie and Jess. We have Alexis in the middle with her books. Lily's up there. There's Brandon down here. He's a cartoonist. He's dressed up as one of his characters from his comic Nut. And now we go to the markets. The markets. Yeah, we started our markets right when we opened. The second month we opened, it was always kind of the plan to have markets. We started them bi-weekly at first, for the first 7 months, I think. And then we just had so many people asking all the time, and people would come in on the off weeks looking for the markets, and they were always bummed out. So we thought maybe we could just do them every week. So we started that, and we haven't really looked back since. Having been a cartoonist for 20 years or so, I kind of knew what made a good show and a bad show. I knew having tables and chairs would make the setup easier for everyone involved and kind of make it more accessible for artists who haven't sold anywhere before. And we get a lot of people like that, and I think that's one of the best parts about it. It's really exciting. I didn't really think about that when I started, but it's really fun to see someone who's never sold their stuff before come in, set up, and kind of, do their thing and be kind of overwhelmed by people buying their art for the first time. It really is really exciting. We charge $20 a table. It's it's just really enough for people to show up. If you give away free tables, everyone wants to take them right away, and then they just kind of don't show up. So, that's what we kind of do. We provide snacks and water. We make it easy on people as we can. So there's a lot of parts of the markets that are really challenging, but they're really, really fun. They're great. I think everyone seems to like them, and it was really I had no idea that I'd be so happy to provide this service here in the neighborhood. We saw so many things close up in the past couple of years, kind of on Lyndale there, that was another big push. I was like, we gotta, it's sad around here. It'd be great to have something nice in the neighborhood. And we tried, and it seems to be working out okay. Also, we started doing recently our cartoonist cabaret on Saturdays. It's kind of an open drink and draw. People can come in and drink and draw, and then we have a class kind of off to the side, and every week it's a different kind of artist doing different classes. Monster Matt does a class. This is Greer here doing a Monchichi customization class where everyone's making sort of bondage gear for their Monchichis and stuff like that. It was really cool. Sold out super fast. Our quickest selling out class that sold out ever. We added spots and stuff. So yeah, she had a slideshow about the history of Monchichi. I didn't know anything about it. It was great. We watched old Japanese Monchichi cartoons. It was a lot of fun. And then we had other events like Flop was our sort of any comic event where it's coming up soon. And we're doing that again at the end of May and June. And this was the readings we had over at Lit Pinball. People read their comics, kind of did their thing. And then this was sort of open streets. It's Kay and Gordon, and then Monster Matt, of course. They were out front for the show, sort of introducing people into the shop and running games and stuff. And it was just a ton of fun, and I really feel so lucky that I have great people like this who show up and do these goofball things. It's really good. And so, the thread here, I guess, is that everyone I brought here tonight, I've met through the markets. I didn't really know anyone. I knew Matt a little before I opened the store, but everyone else I've met here, during the markets, and they've become sort of essential to the store in some way. I mean, I guess most importantly, everyone here kind of embodies that sort of DIY spirit that I and I've always been kind of drawn to as a kid, and they're all doing their own thing, and they're not kind of waiting on anyone else to kind of give them permission to do it. So they make their own stuff, and they make it accessible too, which is hard. It's not as easy as it sounds. And I mean, it's worked out pretty well, I think. I have, one of my favorite shows of all time is a show called Halt and Catch Fire. It's a show about PC computer revolution in the early 80s. It's not really about that, but it's kind of the show's kind of about failure, which is a big part of the creative process, and I really think about that a lot. And there's a line in that show that always stuck with me, and I think about it all the time. I hope I'm not getting too sappy here, but it was computers weren't the thing, or computers are not the thing. It's the thing that gets you to the thing. And I really want that to be what kind of OddMart is. It's not really, the shop isn't for me, it's for other artists. It's not called GLORP Gum for a reason. It's not just about me. The idea was never really appealed to me that OddMart, is just my stuff or anything like that, So OddMart is not the thing. It's the thing that gets you to the thing, which I like to think about. And I hope it can last, and I hope I can pass it off to the next generation of creators. And with that, I'll bring up one of those creators right now, Xiomar Luna. Xiomar Luna. I'm so sorry. Oh,
Oh, hang on. There we go. Hi, my name is Xiomar Luna, but you can just call me Zio. It's like Zio, or Gio is fine too, if you speak Spanish. Yeah, my pronouns are they, he. I'm originally from South Bend, Indiana. I graduated from MCAD with my BFA in comic art back in 2012. I've been making comics since about 2001. Actually, I originally wanted to be a writer when I was a kid, but I also just really liked drawing things. And then I figured out, like, oh, you can put those things together. That's a thing. That's kind of what, made that make sense. Yeah, so I'm a cartoonist, a zine maker, a jewelry maker a little bit now. Yeah, so, oh, did I skip one? Oh, I'm also an arts educator. I've taught some just little comic making classes over at Wet Paint in St. Paul. Yeah, so I also just kind of wanted to show a little bit of my, like, creative influences. Sailor Moon is actually the thing that got me into making comics as a kid. Both the manga and the anime. I picked the Japanese cover because I just thought the color looked way better on that one. Also, things like imagery from tarot cards, although I'm much more of an astrology guy than a tarot guy. Yeah, King Cat Comics by John Porcellino is a huge inspiration, which I'll get to that a little bit later. And some other things like the anime Fooly Cooly, still a huge inspiration to me. In finding an image for this, I am like, oh, I gotta go rewatch Fooly Cooly again. And then, yeah, some other comics, very, like, indie comic stuff, like pretty much anything ever made by Liz Suburbia, who's done a lot of work for Silver Sprocket. Also this new one, Vivian's Ghost by the cartoonist and writer Hal Shreve. That was just posted on Instagram, I think, over the course of, like, I want to say 2022 or 2023 or something like that. And it's just, like, kind of revitalized my energy in making comics, just reading through that whole thing. Also, of course, very inspired by Love and Rockets or Locas by Jaime Hernandez. So yeah, I figured I would just kind of really quickly read a very short comic of mine that seems to relate a little bit to, like, where I'm at in my practice right now. So this is from early March of 2022 with my friend Ezra. Ezra still has very cool hair. It's just different than that now. So ask your question. Okay. By postponing my search for an agent or a publisher and deciding to just keep doing everything myself, did I make the right choice? You've been trying really hard and have done a lot. You asked for help. It's going to be difficult. Hey, of course it's going to be difficult, but that's not what I asked. That's all I got. There's the whole 2 pages together. Yeah, so this is originally from a series that I started back in 2020 called Saturn in Aquarius Comics. And then I did it for the full 3 years that Saturn was in the sign of Aquarius, actually. So it just wrapped up in 2023. Yeah. So, yeah, I guess since then, I guess I don't really know that I got an answer ever really to that question, but I do feel a lot more, like, solid in my practice and the things that I make. Yeah, so here's kind of what I've been up to. I've taught some comic classes I mentioned over at Wet Paint. I've also gotten to, like, speak to some classes at, well, it was more of, like, the, like, queer group at McAllister about making zines. I've also spoken to a class in MCAD's comics program, as well as a couple of different classes at the U about making zines. I created this zine on resources for the local trans community, hopefully working now on getting the 2nd edition ready for Pride Month. And then I was hired to, by my day job actually, to create illustrations for high school puberty classes that are more body diverse. I also did this like 12-issue astrology zine series that focuses on like queer themes in astrology, because I feel like it is something that often gets very gendered, and I kind of wanted to fight back against that a little bit. And then, yeah, I kind of also just started making jewelry for funsies. I really like those googly eye ones. Yeah, that was fun. So yeah, I've been making journal comics, actually, like kind of documenting my life in comics form for about a decade, including the comic that I read from. And this, around the same time, called Saturn and Capricorn Comics, which is actually my like transition memoir. Yeah, so I put some of my favorite images and pages from that comic up here. Yeah. And then, so I mentioned John Porcellino, and I started making autobio comics in college. I had come into college starting with this like art style that was very like inspired by manga and anime. Like I talked about Sailor Moon and Fooly Cooly and a bunch of other stuff too. But yeah, I kind of felt like a little pressured away from that at the time. I mean, there were MCAT and one other college that I looked at were the only ones in around 2008 when I was going to college that allowed you to draw anything that was like manga or anime style. Yeah, so I felt kind of pressured about not doing that anymore. But turns out, like, when you stop making the things that you like and you, don't enjoy it anymore, you kind of, like, stop making stuff. So it's kind of, like, in the middle of my program when that happened. And one of my other professors was friends with this guy, John Porcellino, who I mentioned earlier. And he... this particular comic he was kind of presenting to our class, and I just was really struck by like, oh, you can make things like that. It's so, like, I've done this before. I've just sat and looked at like a bird rolling around in the dirt, or like there's a very like meditative quality and like an atmosphere to his work that I just find really striking. Like all of this is very intentionally put on the page. And yeah, it just kind of like made me realize like, I can kind of just do whatever I want. And if I want to make something about my life or my own experiences, like, that's cool too. And people might get something like that, like I got something from this. So yeah, I started making journal comics. Here's some of my older ones. The first one, Bluish Colors, I started in like over Christmas break, actually, in 2010. I ended up continuing with it once I got back for the next semester, and then going even further with that to, it wasn't quite daily comics, but almost daily comics for pretty much a year. It's pretty edited down now, but you can still find it on my website, xiomarluna.com. And then I wanted to like keep doing it after college, so Neurons was the next one where I did almost a year or two after college. And then I wanted to kind of like start leaning into more of my like queer experiences and non-binary and trans things. Yeah. So pretty much I find things that happen in ordinary life to be very interesting. And at the time I started making journal comics, I was kind of the mindset that like, oh, the only thing that I really know is myself, which turns out that was wrong. But, we got there eventually, and like, I don't know, maybe drawing about it kind of helped me figure some of that stuff out in a way. And, as like a more like marginalized person, being trans, being mixed race, having ADHD, things like that, growing up really poor, documenting and sharing my experiences is actually like something that can be really helpful for other people too. And I really like reading autobio, and so like I will make the things that I like to read, kind of continuing back, putting things back into that realm. Going even further back than these comics, I recently found my comic that I made in like middle school and high school, and I redrew my character's magical girl form. Yes, she can float. Actually has extremely cool blades on the side of her guitar, over-the-knee combat boots that my mom would not let me wear. So, and this is like a comic that I was like so ashamed of once I went to art school, and now looking back on it, it's like, there's some really rad stuff in here. It's so fun. Like, she breaks up with her boyfriend to learn how to be a magical girl and turns into this, like, weird anarchy symbol-themed angel magical girl. And then, like, has a crush on this, like, himbo punk in her homeroom, and they accidentally burn the prom down by battling the villain, and it's just like fun. And I was like, wow, that's awesome. I almost want to like remake this someday. I might. Yeah. So and then now, currently, what I'm working on, my big like passion project or whatever, is a 50-page psychedelic horror gay romance called Basket Star. It's kind of inspired by a lot of different things, but some big ones would be the novel Annihilation, the local vintage shop Hunt and Gather, and my own desire to draw men kissing. Yeah, I actually surprisingly wasn't very into horror until I started reading it. Actually, I think Annihilation might be one of the first horror things that I ever read. And yeah, I've found that like I really enjoy reading it more. Like I make it way more scary in my own head than anyone else ever has depicting something visually. But it's been like really fun to explore this completely new genre. I'm almost done thumbnailing this. There's going to be like 50-something pages, like I was saying, and I'm hoping if I can like get enough done in time to have it done printed in 2026. Not much like process shown here, but the bottom kind of, right corner, is some like pencil drawings that for part of a page that's just like the bottom of a panel that hasn't been fully finished yet or anything. The rest of them are pretty finished images. So yeah, I guess I just my big thing I kind of wanted to share is how important it is to like make the things that you enjoy making. I know that isn't always possible, especially for people who are like, doing art and design for work. But yeah, if you're able to tap into that, I think that's super important. And it's maybe easy to say that, but it still needs to be said. So yeah, I'm still probably going to end up looking for like a publisher or an agent once this project is kind of more together. But for now, I'm enjoying being able to like work at my own pace, have freedom to like explore and make things that I find fun and interesting. So yeah, I hope other people find them fun and interesting too. Thanks.
Everybody. I'm Tori, also known as Night Shift Ceramics, and today I'm going to talk to you mostly about my inspiration and the process of my work. But first I'm going to go ahead and start off by telling you about my background. I think it's really important to know I do not have an academic background in ceramics, which I feel like it's nice to hear those things from people who are doing this full time. I got started in a production pottery job pretty much right after getting my first wheel, even though I had very little to experience. All of us in this facility throw around 1,200 pots a week. So training was kind of like this pottery boot camp, and it was very opposite of the usual way we think of ceramics as like this slow meditative practice. And it was very efficiency and production focused. So once I got up to quota, I kind of wanted to balance the scales in terms of how I was playing with clay. One of the first places I found inspiration was space age design. I was really drawn to these bold and futuristic silhouettes and what was kind of this reimagining of everyday objects. And all the sleek finishes and vivid colors had kind of this unspoken sex appeal. And it felt very sensual to me, which really resonates with my work, especially in terms of color and form. Also, adjacent to this, I was really interested in like these campy sci-fi films, like The Perils of Gwendolyn and Barbarella. And then later we see Fembot, but it was still applicable. But they all use kind of these same futuristic aesthetics, but focused on like these allegedly empowered female protagonists. But the leverage they had was like attributed to the art of seduction and pussy power and super voluminous hair and latex and metallic clothing. So I kind of wanted to take the theatrics of this genre and turn it into something that I could twist through my own personal experience with BDSM and kink culture, which for me has been extremely liberating as a woman. It's been this way I can kind of rewrite the way that I'm sexualized in a way that starts with the negotiation and consent, which is not always present for women. And it's been a way to explore my femininity through, not through the male gaze, and in private. So yeah, I can kind of touch all these subjects and use this pop art style to make it kind of fun and really easily viewable. And all of these pictures are taken by me alone in my living room, late at night, with like a little tripod. A lot of them I have these like 8-inch stilettos in, and for a while I didn't have a clicker to take the pictures, so it was me just like walking back and forth in 9-inch heels, which my roommate definitely heard a lot of that. And so yeah, it was also this way to detach from the laborious aspect of ceramics. Ceramics is a lot of throwing and heavy lifting, and it's so physical. So to be able to get a little bit more conceptual with it was really healing for me, and just taught me how to teach or engage with clay in a new way. So all my images are screen printed onto ceramics, and that's one of the most common questions I get is how I do it. It's very similar to screen printing on a t-shirt. However, the materials are just a little bit different. If you look in the top corner, that's one of the screens I use. They're really thin and filmy, and so they're really easily pressed up against an object. So, and then I press a hyperpigmented glaze, or not glaze, underglaze through the screen instead of ink. And all my prints are 2 parts. They usually have a background and a foreground. So once I have the background on, there's usually one aspect of the background that lets me know to line them up, and I can put on my second layer and I get this really clear image. And if you look at the image, this one's kind of weathered, and that's just because the screen's getting old, which is something I really actually lean into because I think it's quite charming. But yeah, once I am done screen printing, I glaze it and I fire it, and sometimes I do a third firing in order to get metallic finishes or something else. And playing with colors and composition and layering prints has kind of kept me engaged with ceramics, which is something I do not get in my day job whatsoever. And I really love and adore the process of making on my own, and it's been very healing. And it's just been something I've been searching for, and yeah, it also leads me to do really cool things like this and be a part of places like OddMart and get community in ways that I have not before. So yeah, thank you for listening to me.
Hello, my name is Sam Richard, and I am the sole owner, operator, jack of all trades of Weird Punk Books. Weird Punk Books is a small horror press based right here in Minneapolis. The focus is on horror on the weirder end of the spectrum, body horror, cosmic horror, existential horror, and queer horror primarily. Weird Punk to date has put out 28 titles, 23 of which, I believe, are still in print. There are 3 more coming this year. One of the big challenges with publishing books is the covers. Not just that it reflect the inside of the book accurately, that it also not disappoint the writer who wrote the book, but it needs to look good on a shelf at a bookstore. It needs to look good when I'm vending at a table next to all the other titles, and probably most importantly, it needs to look good like this big on your phone as a JPEG. I'd like to talk about a handful of the books I put out, and specifically the stories behind the covers. The first book I'd like to talk about is Brendan Vedito's Pornography for the End of the World. It's a short story collection of body horror and apocalyptic horror with themes of illness. It was nominated for a Wonderland Award and a Splatterpunk Award. It came out in 2022. It's very bleak. And in thinking bleak. Brendan and I, in talking artists, talked a lot about different schools of art, different waves of art, and of course we landed on Polish movie posters, which is something both of us are quite passionate about. In looking around for what might be the right Polish movie poster artist to license art from, we found Wisław Welskowski, who is a kind of legendary Polish movie poster. His work I find very atmospheric, bleak, and nightmarish, which is very in keeping with the tone of Brendan's book. One of the most harrowing things I've ever experienced as a publisher was going to my bank and telling them I needed to make a not insubstantial amount of money wire transfer to Poland because Poland doesn't have PayPal. And the bank manager asked me no less than 6 times to verify that I knew who I was sending the money to and that I wasn't being scammed. And I sent the money, and then I got in my car, and I almost had a panic attack, being like, okay, yes, I did reach out to this person via their website, but what if they're not actually this person? But, that's the worst catfish in the world. Luckily, by the time I got home, before I even confirmed that I had sent the money, the high-res images were in my inbox, so we were all good there. But one of the differences in publishing books is sometimes you're going for a cover that has a direct referential image to the stories or story of the book, whereas other times it's just vibes. You always want the vibes there as part of it, but it's either you're kind of going directly inspiration from something in the book or you're just kind of hitting the mark on how it feels. This is an example of just the feeling. The next book I'd like to talk about is the exact opposite of the spectrum for what Weird Punk publishes, From Pornography for the End of the World, and it is Elegona, which was written by Samantha Kolyesnik. Samantha is a 3-time Stoker Award-winning author, and Elegona is also bleak, but it's a coming-of-age sapphic romance with kind of a folk horror vibe set during the apocalypse. And in talking with Samantha, we kept thinking about the folk horror element of the work, and we were looking at a lot of artists, and I kept thinking of Evangeline Gallagher, who we commissioned the cover for. Evangeline is known pretty prolifically in both big and small press for doing a lot of book covers, but they've also done art for huge businesses and other tiny DIY operations like ours. And this was an example of the cover is directly referential. Those are the 2 main characters. There is a sea monster in that book. It's set on an island. It's fucking great. And they totally captured not just the vibe, but actually a scene from the book. Next, I'd like to actually talk about 2 of my own books. The Still Beating Heart of a Dead God came out last year, and Grief Rituals came out in 2022 and was nominated for a Wonderland Award. Both are short story collections. Both are heavily impacted by the death of my wife in 2017, so they're very sad. They have a lot of grief and a lot of desperation. They're very bleak, but also very personal. And almost as important as that, both of them have a lot of kind of shitty punks and metalheads in them. I'm 42 years old. I've spent most of that as a shitty punk and metalhead. And I always like to try to find people who do art for books, to commission book covers or license images, who don't typically work in the book medium. Enter Fernando JFL, who is a Brazilian artist who's known for pretty prolifically in the metal underground for having done a ton of album covers, show posters, band t-shirts. And his work sits at this perfect intersection for me of both kind of metal imagery, but also all of his stuff feels like the kind of 70s, 80s horror paperbacks that I've been obsessed with since I was a child, thanks to my father, who he passed in October, but he had an incredible library of mass market, sci-fi, horror, fantasy books, as well as history and science. He was just a well-read person. I remember being 6 and pulling Lovecraft books off of his bookshelf and just being enamored with the imagery of the covers. And I would not be here doing this if it weren't for him. And I think especially my love of books as a physical object comes from his reverence for them. The next book I'd like to talk about also kind of slides into that arena. It's Profane Altars, Weird Sword and Sorcery, which is an anthology that came out last year that I edited. It features short stories from Emma Alice Johnson, Adam Smith, Matthew Mitchell, Sarah Century, Charles Ostermeyer, Edwin Callahan, and myself. The prompt was basically, I asked really close friends who are fantastic contemporary weird horror writers who also love the sword and sorcery genre to cram those two genres together. And I have a whole manifesto of that if you want to hear later. I won't get into it now. But for the cover on this kind of crazy thing happened where I was looking for cover art that would very much reflect, feel like a book you're pulling off of a shelf in 1977 or 1982. And I'm going to be honest with y'all, Weird Punk doesn't have the kind of money to license a Frank Frazetta painting. So I was looking for other artists from that era who worked in those mediums and genres, and I ended up stumbling upon Jeffrey Catherine Jones. I only then realized that Robert E. Howard, Sword of the Gael, I've owned that book since I was 12 or 13. I've been looking at Jeffrey Catherine's art most of my life. And then I started digging into her life as I kept finding her imagery. And it turns out Jeffrey Catherine Jones was a pioneering trans artist. She also was a part of The Studio, which was a commune of artists that included her, Barry Windsor Smith, Michael Kaluta, and Bernie Wrightson. And I see a couple people nodding, know those names. Those are some of the most legendary names, both in the fantasy art and comics mediums in history. And she was a part of that, and she's been a little forgotten. And I've kind of made it my mission to help keep her legacy alive. It was really hard finding who owned her estate because she passed several years ago, and I couldn't find anything. There's no archive, there's no estate website keeping her art alive. Fortunately, my friend Mike Phillips, who runs From Beyond, which is a fantastic small press in Chicago, is like a wizard at this shit. And in 2 days, he had her daughter's email address for me. And her daughter was kind enough to track down an old colleague of Jeffrey Catherine's and get me in contact with him. And he managed to get me a high-res scan. And it was like Christmas for me that day. The other element of the cover, and don't tell anyone this, but Ballantine had a horror line in the 70s. It has 5 or 6 books. They're all Derleth and Lovecraft reprints. And I basically borrowed the frame that an unknown designer made and cut out all of the text and kind of rebuilt it myself. Again, in keeping with the theme of the book, which was bridging these gaps between weird horror and sword and sorcery. And that's kind of the vibe of the press for me is I always think about pushing against the perception of what horror can be. I think there's a lot of ideas that horror is one set of tropes, but the history of the genre is not that. The history of the genre is diverse and experimental and weird and does all sorts of things that are unexpected, and that's what I love about it. But I also always want to make sure that I'm maintaining a reverence for that history and for what came before and not abandoning it and not just separating myself from it. One of the other big challenges with book covers is they have to just stand out in a crowd. We're all constantly on phones and watching movies and watching TV and playing video games and doing all of these other things, and trying to get people to read books is a challenge in general, especially when you're a weird niche DIY one-person operation operating out of a dining room in South Minneapolis. And so what I really want from the books is something that will get people interested just by looking at the cover, that will make them want to open the book or even just simply ask questions. I also have a weird rule where I don't put any human skulls on the covers of the books, because you can throw a rock in a bookstore and hit 6 horror books that are just a human skull. There's a QR code on the screen. It goes to the website if you want to do that. It's also just weirdpunkbooks.com. If you order books from me, I'm the person packing it. The order, I handwrite your address on the label. And I would just love it if you're interested in this stuff, to support what I'm doing, to support what the other artists are up here are doing, and to support what OddMart is doing. I'd like to thank you all for being here. I'd like to thank the Walker for having us. I'd like to thank the other artists, and especially Brad for asking me to participate. And thank you so much. Next is Monster Matt. Cheers.
I'm Monster Matt, and I make weird things. And before I get started, I just want to make a little disclaimer. I am the only person who didn't put my slides in any specific order. So no, they're not going to match up with what I'm saying. So I'm in on that too. So it's not like everyone else who was super prepared. So just letting you know that. But yeah, so that's my logo, Monster Matt's Creepy Crafts. So I'm going to start with a story about my father. And, well, let's back it up a bit. In high school, I was very into, and again, my dad, this has nothing to do with him. So I just want to say that. Oh, man, the next one's not any better. So I'll just... But I was really into Rocky Horror Picture Show when I was in high school. My best friend at the time had taken me on his 14th birthday. We went to see Rocky Horror Picture Show. That was apparently a rite of passage with their family, which is awesome. And so I was really into that movie. And, by the time I got into high school, I thought, God, there's no, and this is before they made Rocky Horror Picture Show merchandise. I was like, no one's making a Frankenfurter doll? And I was like, I bet I could. So I took a military doll, kind of like a G.I. Joe doll, went into our dining room at home and started taking off the fatigues and the boots, as one does when one wants to make a Frankenfurter doll. And I'm taking the black electricianer's tape, making the underwear, the corset, and as I'm painting the makeup on the face, my dad, who grew up in a very small town in South Dakota during the 30s and 40s. So a little conservative. Walks in, he looks down at what I'm doing, and, just out of curiosity, he's like, well, what are you making? And I was like, oh, I'm just taking this army guy and turning him into a sweet transvestite. And my dad, then my dad just looks at me and is like, okay. And unbeknownst to me, but later what I heard was then he walked into the room where my mother was resting and, reading or watching TV and said, do you know that Matt is in the other room turning a G.I. Joe into a transvestite? And my mom just looked up and was like, yeah. And then apparently he just went, okay. And he ended up, that was fine for him. And I bring the story up and I start with it for two reasons. And now, since I've stopped talking about Dad, we'll go to the next slide. But the reason I bring that up is two reasons. Number one, just how amazingly supportive my parents were, even when they had no flippin' idea why I was making what I was making or what I was making. But they were very supportive. They always supplied things for me to use. They were always very, again, they didn't know half the stuff I made or why I did it, but they were like, hey, we want to, support your creativity. And the second thing about that story is just that I feel like I've always kind of had that impetus to take something and what I call Frankensteining it. So taking something and saying, hey, what else can it be? Maybe it's at the end of its life, maybe it's something no one really cares about, but I want to take something and I can see what it can be and turn it into something else. And really, not to sound too pretentious, it's not really about that. It's more just, it's so fun for me. That's kind of a playground, is to take stuff, kind of like these, where they started out as Easter eggs and turned into carnivorous plants. And it's funny because the process now, I guess people call it upcycling, things like that. When I was a kid, it was just, hey, I don't have a ton of money. I want to make stuff. I'm going to take paper tubes or, folders from my dad's office and make something out of them. So My friends joke that I'm cheap. I like to think of it as being cost effective because, as was brought up earlier, it's nice to be able to create something on a budget so that then I can sell it for less than, what I would have to otherwise. And just make sure that I can get these crazy things out to people who enjoy them. And so Monster Mat really begins with the Nightmare Ponies, which again, because I didn't time slides, these aren't them. But the Nightmare Ponies started out, I was at a Dollar Tree and I saw these little knockoff My Little Ponies. And I thought, wow, these are actually kind of cool material. I bet I could do something with it. And like usually happens, I didn't have an idea at that time. But later I looked at them and I said, I bet if I take some paint to these, I can make them just a little creepier. And so that's kind of where it started. And I would do, take paint to them, and then eventually I found my absolute favorite medium, and that's hot glue. It is flippin' amazing what you can do with it. And I'm still learning what to do with it. We'll get to some more slides there that are maybe a little more appropriate. But yeah, with the hot glue, it just opened up. All of a sudden, I was taking these little ponies and just, adding eyeballs and things that were just, it was, again, just fulfilling need. And at that time, for me, I wasn't selling them anywhere. I was just showing them to people. And then eventually I found plastic skeletons at the Dollar Tree that then became items and creatures and critters that basically were kind of like taxidermy gone wrong. So I would do that. And then came the masks, where I would be somewhere where there would be $2, $3 masks, but really good quality, maybe a crappy paint job or something that just wasn't right. And so I'd take those and modify them. And eventually I started selling some of the stuff at craft shows, which unfortunately some of the craft shows were not ready for this. So eventually I found places like Crypticon and Twin Cities Con, where people there, I would find more people who understood and kind of had the same interests I did. So yeah, here are some of the ponies. But yeah, it was really, really rewarding to finally get my art out there, share it with other people. And even what's great is to talk to parents who are like, oh, my daughter, I got to go get her over here because she does this. And I'm just like, oh, that's awesome. And so I think that brings me to working with, oh yeah, Harvey Keitel pony. Brings me back to kind of, where Monster Mat has really flourished, which was these conventions. And about, I'd say, 10 or 11 years ago, I met Brad, saw his art at a convention. It was like, whoa, we are so similar. And so we bonded over a lot of stuff. And what's awesome is like about 9 or 10 years later, he sends me a text and it's like, hey, dude, I'm going to open up a shop. Do you want to have your stuff there? And I was like, hell yeah. So, it's been amazing. It's been really great to be there. Yeah, these are the new can koozies. But no, it's really amazing to find a place like OddMart, and not to sound corny, and I'm really not trying to suck up and kiss up to you, Brad, but I'm just going to say that it is nice and refreshing to have a place that's not just a retail store, but it is a community, and it's very supportive of people. And I'm just echoing what's been said before, that it's pretty amazing to find a place that really just welcomes you. You find other people, you inspire each other, you bounce work off each other. And it really is. It's just nice to see the cycle of inspiration, making art. That art then, in turn, inspires someone else. Hopefully that person makes art, and it keeps going. And it's such a great feeling to be part of that. And it's a wonderful, sometimes frightening cycle, but it's really, really rewarding. Thank you all.
Lita Zawaki, and I'm going to talk about design in comics. But first, who am I? I have a bachelor's of fine arts and a master's in applied cartooning. And I'm an independent cartoonist. I write and draw comics and graphic novels. And encouraging comic literacy and fostering creative communities is part of my art practice. So I am a Autoptic board member. I organize panels, special guests, and comic readings. I also created the Minneapolis Drink and Draw to engage with creative community around the Twin Cities and encourage anyone to make art in a low-stress environment. My partner, Christina Nahman, who's over here, and we host makers markets called Midnight Creatures as part of our business called Tooth Saint, and we started hosting those events at OddMart and around the Twin Cities. So Tooth Saint is a handcrafted leather accessory and custom clothing line. And I do screen printing and jewelry making and design work. And when I'm in the studio, this is Lucas, my little helper. When I'm not in the studio, I'm making comics. He's also really helpful with making comics. Right now, I'm working on a graphic novel that's about crop circles. It's 220 pages around. It'll be done in the next year. So when you think of comics, maybe you think of superhero movies or maybe newspaper comic strips. But do you think of them in terms of design? How the page and panels affect your reading of a story? So I'm going to show you a couple of examples of cartoonists that I really love and how they approach design in comics. So spot blacks is something that you can use to really make things punchy, but also really focuses the eye, and also using color to try and focus more like the sort of monotone color on the left. And then you have one character that has color. So really drawing your eye through the page. This page also has some really great word balloons. They have a lot of character and their own personality. And you can really build a mood by taking little moments and just build up this really atmospheric feeling, and it kind of slows down time. And all of my notes are wrong. It's fine. Maybe I'll pull them up on my phone. Anyways, so you can also get this with sort of a moment-to-moment action where you can see really pulls you to the body language, especially with this artist because they don't draw faces. So you really have a lot of action happening just with your body language alone. And also using color, it can be kind of an emotional color. Dang, none of my notes are right. Anyways, emotional color, so you can go from this scene to this scene, and it's just a page turn, but you can see the difference in mood just with the color. The other thing you can do is focus and highlight specific things. So this is a spot color where you can see these glowing shoes or the background. So just kind of focusing on that emotional state in that one frame. Then you can also use color to be in a maximal kind of way, but it utilizes a really emotional kind of coloring, not an actual real color. And that can help build up an emotion and a mood without using any narration. You can also use color to go from sort of a really mundane, everyday feeling to a very dreamlike sequence and then back into mundane. And then the other thing you can do with comics that you can't do with a lot of other forms is you can see a whole page spread at the same time. So this allows you to have a really unconventional narratives when you want to, like in this particular example, where it's really non-linear and sort of surreal. And you can read this page in any order you want without losing any of the information. And then you can also do a lot of things with different styles. So this really highly rendered style, or something really minimal where you have really sparse lines. Also just having a really slowed down of time and showing the shadows change in the same scene. And then comics can really verge on abstraction. So you're really just getting tiny pieces of a scene and you have to sort of piece these things together. And then slowly you can kind of develop like an idea of what the scene is about. And then you can get even more abstract with images like this, where you're really drawn through the page using just the text on the bottom. And when you remove panels and you remove word balloons, you can still have a comic, and it can give you this even more intimate feeling, like you're reading someone's diary, and even really abstract imagery. So this is just a few examples of the ways that like design can be utilized in a comic page. And I encourage you to go to OddMart because it's a great place to find indie comics like my own and other people that self-publish and smaller presses. And if you don't want to do that, you can also come to Flop because we're going to do that. And it's going to be all a bunch of comic people in person. So if you want to meet cartoonists and talk about their work, yeah, so that's it for me.
All right, thanks everybody, and thank you, Brad, and everyone from OddMart. I kind of want, as soon as I can, turn it over to any questions from the crowd. So if anyone has any questions for anyone on the panel, feel free to raise your hand up high, and we've got a few of our wonderful ushers with a mic to be able to run down and ask questions. Anyone so far? All right, well, I can kick it off too. I'm kind of just curious, we've been talking through all of your presentations sort of about the community that's building around OddMart, all the amazing work you are all doing, and as well as other folks. I'm just kind of curious, in some ways, OddMart feels so Twin Cities to me in a way that's so beautiful. And I'm curious, like, what do you think might be the reason that places like OddMart can be made and exist in communities of artists can thrive in this way in the Twin Cities where other places it doesn't always seem like it might be possible?
Maybe Sam, you want to take that?
Me?
You are from, oh, I mean, you're,
Me?
yeah, I'm not from the Twin Cities, but I mean, it's such a great place. But
It's funny to me because I feel like OddMart is a little bit of an anomaly here. I feel like a lot of the old Minneapolis, where that felt much truer to me, where this kind of thing was maybe more affordable for someone to do, feels like less within reach than it used to. And maybe that's just because I'm cynical and bitter and old. But I do think that its strength, and probably why it's become what it's become, is Brad's willingness to like bring people in and not really like gatekeep it. I mean, obviously, like, no Nazis and shit, but like, you know, there's some amount, but the good kind. But just that he's so willing to just embrace people and in their weirdness and in whatever they're doing that they're passionate about. And I think that's why the community is kind of galvanized around it, because he's also inclusive of so many communities and varieties of art and so many different types of expression that it's like you can have your cool, weird sculptures, and you can also have your cool, weird indie comics, and you can also have your rad ceramics, and like all of that is welcome there.
delicious gumballs.
Yeah, yes, that too.
one right there. Oh, if you don't mind just speaking to the mic, thank you.
Thank you. I have to agree with Sam that OddMart feels more like an anomaly, not due to the regional nature of it, but just because it seems incredibly daunting to endeavor in any sort of freelance career now. And I'm just wondering how everyone is feeling about that, about the pressure of sustaining any sort of both the economy of freelancing and how you also maintain your passion for what you're doing within the pressure of the economy of freelancing.
I mean, I can speak to that. I mean, at a certain point, the scales just tipped. When the Glorp was taking off, people were noticing it, and I was getting asked to do more freelance, but the freelance was taking me away from that, and the freelance wasn't paying as well as the shirts, and then you're stuck in this like sort of back and forth area for many, many years. And I was also like, doing maintenance on like apartments and stuff too, and always doing anything I could to kind of, keep it afloat. But it was, it's tough. I don't know how anyone does it. I was always sort of like a mid-tier freelancer. Like I never like kind of got up high. Like I remember I was always really busy, like in January, like sort of like December, end of the year, because like all the companies were like trying to use up little bits of their budget so they could. So I'd always get like hired to do like greeting cards or like some kind of little project they were working on and stuff. So at a certain point it was much more stable to kind of focus on that. But it took a very long time. And the only reason the store could happen was like I had 12 years of like back stock, and I had like all this stuff that I had slowly chipped away. It was a very slow process. And I couldn't have just started from day one and just printed a million shirts or whatever. It was just a trickle. And yeah, freelancing's so volatile. I mean, I was doing comics for a while, and it was nice to have, I was doing kids comics, like Didn't Fit Your Time and Uncle Grandpa and stuff like that, like backups, like shorts. And it was good to have that stability, but the rates kept dropping and dropping and dropping like everything else. And, it just quit making sense to focus on other people's stuff when it wasn't, in the long term, wasn't paying anything, essentially.
I also wanted to add to that, like being like from the comics program at MCAT, I have a lot of friends who like do professionally work in the comics industry or like as illustrators. And like I have done some freelance and stuff like that, but it's almost been intentional at this point, like to have a day job alongside that. Like I kind of need to have health insurance and and then, you're spending all your time on that and the energy on that, but you also still want to like, I don't know, for me, it just feels like this, I know that like what I'm here to like do in the world is make art. And, I guess that's why like I keep doing it. I don't know, before the place I'm currently working, I was like cleaning houses, and I've had some weird like jobs at like a hospital or retail or things like that, again, to kind of just, pay the bills and stuff. There's always kind of like, but I have to also do this. Like the whole reason I'm doing the day job is to like keep doing that and like pay for the website. And it's really rough. And I think a lot of people do that. And it's always been like something that I really enjoy about like the events you do at OddMart is like Cartoon Cabaret is like one of my favorite things. And I was saying this yesterday too, like it's so cool to see such a spread of people who are interested in art and comics and cartoons. You have people who are working professionally, but then also people who are like self-publishing, whether intentional or not intentional. There's, your kids are there, and there's like kids running around being like, look what I drew. And like random people see the sign outside and be like, oh, there's like cartoons, and I can have a coffee and like talk to some people about things that I like. Like that is like actual community building. And so that, one of the many reasons OddMart's really incredible.
Oh, I saw a hand jump right back over there.
I'm just going to assume that all of you have day jobs because I know a lot of artists as well, and it's just, but okay, one's nodding. Congratulations.
It's not for long. I need a real job.
Thank you. But the day jobs, how many of you have a day job that is related to a creative process versus one that doesn't? And would you say that creative process drains you out throughout your day? You find you don't have creative energy at the end of it, or does it help? Or if you didn't have a job, if you did have a job that wasn't in the creative industry, did you just have a lot of creative energy at the end of the day?
So I clearly have a job that's in my industry, and it's, like I was saying before, very production focused. So to me, they feel like two different things. And one really nice thing about ceramics is you have so many different processes you can do. You can, like, I'm screen printing, I'm taking pictures, I'm throwing, I'm trimming, firing, and glazing. So a lot of my energy at the end of the day, if I'm really tired of throwing, goes somewhere else. And I kind of like to make sure I have multiple different aspects open to myself so I can maintain stamina. But also, because it's a creative pursuit, I don't really get super burned out unless I'm going to the studio every day and working like an extra 8 hours. That's really when it starts to like, okay, maybe I should like sit at home. But I do like third spaces, and I'm a busybody, so it suits me.
I don't have a real job other than Weird Punk, but that wasn't a decision I really made. I worked in tech. Before that, I worked in restaurants, and I was a sausage maker. But then I worked in tech, and I got laid off when like COVID lockdown hit, and because I mean every industry, right? A ton of people got laid off, and the federal unemployment. I'd never taken unemployment in my life, but the federal unemployment ended at the same time as a book that I published was starting to like sell. It sold like almost 40,000 copies. It's not. I only had it. Like Weird Punk only held it for 5 months. Now like a big deal press has it, but I lived off that money for a very long time, like just as lean as I could. And it's been like maybe a couple years of just kind of scraping by. I do some freelance, but it's all just like book internal formatting, which is something I like and isn't really super creative. It's more technical, so I don't feel like that ever drains my creative energy. But I will say, as both a writer and a publisher, those things get in the way of each other all the fucking time. There'll be days where I'm like, today I'm writing. I have a story that's like due for an anthology or magazine that I was invited to, and I need to get it done. And I'll sit down at the computer and I'll look at the workload for Weird Punk, and I'll just go like, shit, like I can't dedicate any of my time today to my own writing unless I'm going to be writing at like 2 a.m. So it's that balance can be really hard.
Oh. Sorry. Yeah, maybe that one, and then we'll hop to you.
I don't know what's happening. Okay, there we go. Yes, so as like a non-artist and friendly bystander, I think what looks really remarkable to me about OddMart are like the events and the odd market happening on such a regular cadence so often, and the community building that seems like it has to happen from that. And I've been to many art events that do not look like OddMart, and the artists I see there might possibly feel less comfortable in a lot of these other bigger art events. And I wonder, does that have like a feedback, that experience on your practice, like being in this space that feels more cohesive to what you're doing again and again? And like, what impact does that have, if any?
Well, yeah, I guess. Okay. OddMart and being at these shops and all that, or being at the shows, is very similar to when I worked at art instruction schools, the Draw Me school, I guess. Many people remember it as. And that was such a great experience then, for the same reason OddMart is now, is that to be around people who are, you gravitate toward people who are similar minded. And that doesn't necessarily mean, oh, me and Sam do horror stuff, so that's, but it's everyone here just has a very similar drive to create, and that's what's amazing about that. And again, as I said kind of during my talk, it's like, what's great about being there is then talking to people who come in, don't know the shops there, and all of a sudden you're introducing them to these ideas of like, hey, yeah, you can just make this. You don't have to be, there's no degree to be an artist, And so I think that's what's really amazing about these, these shows, these, being able to be at OddMart, is just being able to be around other people, feeding off each other's energy, and just going from there.
I have something to say. One of the other biggest parts of community at OddMart, I think, is just actually the patrons. I feel like when I'm tabling at other events, the engagement isn't quite as high, but at OddMart, people are coming in every Sunday and they're looking for you there and they want to talk to you and see you and pick your things up, even if they're not going to buy them, which I think is actually like the most healing part, because I think some people are so scared of the consumerism aspect of viewing art that they feel a little bit uncomfortable. So having a space where people feel like they can talk to you and interact is just really socially recharging.
Yeah, I agree. It's like, I don't know, you would think that like, oh, I really want to like make some money from this thing I'm tabling at. But like, honestly, so many people do come in and just like start chit chatting with you about something cool they saw on your table. And like, that's so fulfilling. Like, I'm excited about this thing clearly because I just put so much energy into it and you like it too. And so like, oh yeah, let me tell you all about this. And like, here's the backstory and like, here's what this was like. And here's where I kind of fucked up. And like, but like, oh, and then they have something new to say, or maybe they got an idea or it reminds them of something. It's really cool.
Samantha, thank you for being patient.
Thank you. Specifically, I had a question about the creation of like the actual Glorp shirts, where you talked a lot about the process of actually making the print and making the character. But I was actually curious of how you decided on the colors for the shirts, because you do have a lot of just like stark black shirts that everybody sees all the time. But I mean, one of my favorite ones is the Garbage Gobbler, which you showed, and that has a very light like baby blue background, and your Garfield has like a cyan. And I was just curious how you landed on that, or if it was just something random.
Yeah, I guess I didn't really talk about the process. I mean, I used Twin Cities Tees is who I use to print the shirts. And the process I use on the shirts, it is silk screen, but it's discharge printing. So they remove the ink is bleached out basically, and they use water-based ink. So there's no plastic or anything involved. And it kind of sits inside the shirt, so you can kind of sweat through it. It's not quite as heavy and dense as most type of printing, but it also there's shirts when you remove they're not always like black shirts, or we're not always black shirts. Some of the yellow didn't sell well that year. They dye them all black and they send them back, and that really messes with the process. So the bleaching out process, a lot of the other colors aren't, like a lot of blues used to be yellows and greens. So during the pandemic, especially when there were shortages, it caused chaos everywhere. You couldn't get true colors or anything like that. But I think that a lot of time, I mean, I love doing the colored shirts. The black shirts are easier. They always discharge well. You just bleach them as hard as you want to remove all the color out of there and get a white. But that's not always the case with like a dark blue or green. This is very technical, I guess, but yeah, but it also adds a kind of I like it because sometimes the colors, it kind of mutes them together in a lot of ways. And I'll use a lot of bright colors, but that one in particular, that light blue, I like to use a lot because there's sort of it kind of mutes the ray, it brings them all together, the colors a little bit, because it's not quite bleached out, it's not quite laying ink over white, it's like an off-white. So sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes it's a huge pain and it just goes badly. I've had a lot of bad shirts. If you're in next time, I can show you some bad shirts that where it didn't work.
Well, I think we have time for maybe one more question. Oh no, and there's so many. Okay, everyone's pointing over at this one, so I'm going with the crowd. Yeah, I think right there in the middle.
T-shirt cannon question.
Sorry if we didn't get to your question in here, but yeah.
Okay, I just have a question about that last one with the design in graphic novels. There was just a graphic novelist. I was really interested in her work, but I didn't catch her name. But it was the one of the the one of the graphic novel where the characters had no faces. What was that called?
Yeah, come find me in the audience when we have drinks afterwards. I'll talk to you about it.
I think that might be a perfect segue. So if we didn't get to your question, please join us for the reception and celebration of OddMart and everyone. And thank you all so much for coming. And thank you all for coming to the Walker.